Welcome to another edition of AI Impact Talk with me, Timbekile Mkhototo. Today we're looking at AI, artificial intelligence in the aviation sector. And who best to speak to than the man who, if you've flown on one of the most popular airlines in this country, in South Africa, you'll be very familiar with his name and his voice. I'm talking about FlySafair's Kirby Gordon, who's with us in studio today. Kirby, good to see you. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Let's talk about you and FlySafair and your role within the organization, because over the years, we've gotten to the point where we hear you just before we take off and before we land.
Yeah. It's been almost 10 years now, which has been interesting. And it's been a fantastic journey. I started at the organization just shortly after they took off for the first time. It was the October. I think I started in the Feb. And it's been an incredible ride or flight, I suppose, since then.
And what's the journey? How would you describe the journey, especially in the context of the conversation that we're having now, right? Because when in the last decade, a lot has happened when you look at artificial intelligence, introduction of new technology across the various spheres of life.
Yeah, I found travel and aviation specifically to actually be really fascinating in that regard. I came from an e-commerce background. I was with Kalahari.com before FlySafair, and it was so interesting. We at the time felt like we were at the cutting edge of e-commerce. We were started selling books. We kept referencing Amazon. And then when you entered aviation, you kind of realized, but hang on, these guys have been doing it for quite a while, and there's a whole lot of technology that actually kind of precedes the sort of stuff that we'd known. And so, to be part of that evolution, to look back on that history, and then to look at where we're going now and the changes that are being enforced now, it's really interesting to watch that evolution.
And what does that look like, that evolution in practical terms? Because often when we fly or use a service, we're not aware of just what it takes to ensure that it's a smooth operation for your staff and us as the passengers.
Yeah, it's an incredibly complicated game. Everything from, the basics of booking a ticket and making sure that we've got a seat available for you on the flight that you're expecting to be on, to the background stuff that comes to ensuring that you're maintaining your aircraft, that you're getting them, appropriately ready for a flight, that they're operating economically. There's so much that goes on up and down the value chain in aviation. And of course, off the back end of that, and I think what's driven so much of technological involvement over the years is that strong safety prerogative and the need to continue to pursue that and to apply whatever needs to be applied to make sure that works.
What does AI look like for FlySafair today?
So at the moment, we're in a big exploratory phase, I think, with most of the world in terms of that. I think what we really enjoy and appreciate about AI is sort of two basic capabilities. The one capability being its capacity to manage fairly mundane tasks, to kind of liberate work, if that makes sense. And the other is its capacity to be able to access and analyze and work with large amounts of data. And those two kind of functionalities really help us. So on the customer service side, we've got this ability to really be able to dig deep and do great things with the AI in terms of serving a lot of people at once. And then on the kind of technology side, on the actual aviation side, on the predictive maintenance side, on the efficiency side, that ability to be able to run a hypothesis across not just a sample of data, all the data, is really fantastic.
And has it made life as easy as it's supposed to be? Because when we think AI or tech in more broad terms, we all think, oh, this is a problem solver, but if you don't get it right, it can come with its own complications.
100%. And I think that's really what we're looking at. It's changed life. Has it made it easier? I think that's on the horizon. Has it given us the capacity to achieve more? Yes, certainly in the short run it has. But I think what's so interesting is this evolution, because there's so much more kind of focus on almost sense checking it and shepherding it and kind of quality controlling what you get out of it. So, you'll run this hypothesis, for example, over a large set of data, and you'll get an output, and that looks great. But you're, and maybe because we're a little bit skeptical, you test and you test and you test and you
Trust
test and
issues.
you watch. We've got some trust issues that we're working through. Yeah.
I want to pick up on the two things that you mentioned earlier, the customer service element, right? And around the preventative maintenance, for instance. But let's start with customer service and how you alter that so that you get the best out of it. And let's say if I'm flying FlySafair, that I too get to benefit.
Well, absolutely. This is what we're really aiming for. So particularly us, we're a low-cost carrier, which is quite different to a full-service business. So we really, as a kind of basic principle, we look for high volumes, low margins. You need a service that you can replicate really easily. In our world, our preference is that our customers are able to help themselves. So we try to build a lot of tools to empower them to be able to make their own changes to their flights if they want to, or add their own extras.
Something as basic as the app. Apps, websites, all of that's come online.
Absolutely, because for me, if someone can do that through that tool, it's a cost saving versus needing to have an ear available for them to have that function done for them. Not that we're hesitant to do that, but it's really is part of the cost saving model. So what we get out of AI, especially with the natural language models, is this capability now to be able to answer questions, to perform functions, to be able to do a lot. And almost actually, our aim, our ambition is to arrive at a point where we give you a private travel concierge, a private travel agent that you can deal with and have a really personal, high touch, intelligent experience and interaction with. But we can replicate it ad nauseum. Yeah.
I'm thinking of, for example, your check-in system where just on WhatsApp, a sort of chatbot system where from my couch, I can check in with no problem.
That's absolutely it. And it's a lot of questions. People want to know a lot of things. Even some tasks that are a little bit more complicated for people. I mean, we obviously, we look at our users and we group them into different spaces. And so if you look at changing a flight, for example, there's certainly a different category of user who would be quite comfortable to book a flight when they're online when they want to. But when it comes to changing it, they sort of go, oh, I need to speak to a human being.
Because we don't trust it, right? What you were saying earlier, where you go, if I change this on my cell phone, will it reflect on Kirby's computer 100%. When I get to the airport?
Or more, maybe we don't trust ourselves sometimes. Am I going to mess it up?
I don't trust myself at all.
You know what I mean? Whereas now, at least if you speak to, the entity, it's somebody that you can ask a question, doesn't really matter how you phrase it. Your scope as a user to make a mistake, I think, is somewhat sort of limited, and I think that's valuable.
And preventative maintenance, what shape does that take?
So, I mean, look, this is something that really fascinates the nerd in me, second to none. I mean, it's a really interesting field. So the whole kind of theory behind preventative maintenance is that we watch how the aircraft operates. So anytime a flight is happening, there are like a bajillion sensors on that machine that are giving out readings constantly.
We should hope.
No, 100% they are. And, we analyze those graphs after the flight happens. And it's really fascinating to see, they can tell what kind of weather conditions were prevailing, what winds were happening, whatever the circumstances were in terms of how they had to fly. So we've got this mass of incredible data. And what we're able to do now is really synthesize all of that data in one go. So they can start running models and doing a bit of machine learning to say, gosh, we've noticed if this particular part starts to vibrate at a slightly different frequency, that's indicative of this thing happening. I think it's probably a lot of what we're going to see in the health sciences space in the future as well.
So why your flights are always early?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, you joke, it actually is. One of the things that we measure in terms of making sure that your on-time performance is right is what we call your technical dispatch reliability, which means how often do you have a technical issue that stops your aircraft from going. And I'm very proud to say that is beyond 99%.
I mean, FlySafair is the only aircraft. People joke online about how you can leave 30 minutes late and arrive 20 minutes early on a FlySafair flight.
Well, we do what we can.
But I want to talk about safety, right? Because for the aviation sector, that's always top of mind, making sure that, yes, it is incredibly safe to fly. I mean, it's safer to fly than drive, right? Yeah. But you constantly have to do more because it's the one mode of transport where even the people who use it for the first time are most anxious about how safe they're going to be.
Well, 100%. I mean, you're being hurtled in a metal tube through the air 3/4 the speed of sound. I mean, I think there is a certain degree of concern around that. So yeah, I mean, it really is, and that's been one of the phenomenal things over history in terms of modern aviation is the degree of safety that we've managed to put behind it. And I mean, there's no accident behind that. That's through a lot of this type of research. And I think what we're getting out of AI is the capacity to enhance that and to continue to view it. I mean, every day, and it's really topical at the moment out of the aircraft manufacturers. We hear about different things that are happening. They've discovered that there might be some sort of fatigue on a piece of metal or whatever the case is. And it's all of that stuff now that we've got such a microscopic lens on, thanks to the technology that's available, that we're taking it to the next level.
And what are the disadvantages? You mentioned, for example, that you're a low-cost carrier, right? in terms of where you are in the market, how does that put you at an advantage, perhaps, or make things easier for you with the ever evolving tech that's in the space?
I think what's great about it for us as a business is that the business case and the use case for investing in tech is quite easy to make. There's no sort of there's no hesitancy because of the ability to create volume against it. So those business cases are really quick and easy. I think if you were running, let's say, a really premium first class experience, or like all
fleet.
business, huge fleet, that kind of thing, you might be hesitant to say, well, I don't want to take that hugely personal experience away. I mean, even though what AI does is bizarrely and incredibly personal, you might be hesitant to do that. Our world, that argument is pretty easy to make.
Let's talk about misconceptions. What are the misconceptions about flying, tech, or AI?
Well, it's not flying the airplanes.
Is it not? Because people joke now that, the pilots are just sitting there. The system operates on its own. Like you press a button, there's a setting and we're off.
Yeah, no, not quite. Look, I mean, we have had obviously autopilot and a number of things that have been developed over years, and probably, they are, I suppose, way in advance of what we're seeing on the ground in terms of motor cars, et cetera, et cetera. And that's phenomenal to have those capacities at hand and a lot of those sorts of bits of machinery and catches that are there for safety. We're not at the stage where we're doing self-flying aircraft just yet. Pilots they've still got jobs for the future, for the next bit. And I personally would rather there's a sophisticated pilot up front there, when he's needed or when she's needed.
And do you think, how soon are we going to get there, do you think? The point where actually we'll have not driverless because you're not driving the plane, but pilot-free aircraft?
I think it's in the distant future. I do. I think we'll see. We'll see largely pilotless flying vehicles before we see that. So you see the amazing technologies that are happening in terms of things like drones that are being done for using deliveries, etc. So I think we'll see a very sophisticated network of those happening. It's quite a nice environment as opposed to the roads, in that if you keep it at a certain level, there's a sort of safeness to it in regard you're not going to hit people or things that are carrying people. So I think we'll see all of that become quite sophisticated before such time as we start to feel comfortable ourselves to get behind those.
So that's a bit further down the line. But what is on the horizon, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years, in terms of technology and development?
So I think we, in our game anyway, we're going to see it definitely on those two sorts of fronts. We're going to see it behind the scenes and the technical stuff that we do that people don't really understand. So we're hopefully going to see a lot of it helping us with optimization of schedules. We're going to see it being able to bring down our cost of operating. In our world, something like fuel. I mean, fuel equates for about 60% of the direct cost of operating a flight.
Trying to make it flying cheaper.
So it makes it
bring
cheaper.
down the cost, but make it safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, on that safety front as well. On a customer experience side, I think that's where we're going to see probably a lot of the same stuff that we'll see across the board in other customer service environments. But, that scale, that high touch, that capability to be able to do things yourself, that kind of intuitiveness, those are the things that we're aiming for to try and really elevate that experience, and particularly one that you can then reproduce consistently.
Right. And we speak a lot on the show. Various guests have come in. We've talked about tech in the cell phone industry, in the communications, we've looked at healthcare, etc. And the one theme that keeps coming up when we talk about developing systems where I can do things from the comfort of my home, from the comfort of my office, is what becomes of the workers? How do you make sure that their skill set is able to keep up?
And that is really interesting, because there's a whole lot of change management in any organization when you have to kind of confront that. And I think what's so fascinating, and I think the right way to look at it, is a degree of liberation from the mundane work. It's the opportunity for people to be used more meaningfully and to think more, rather than just turn the old cog in a kind of industrial revolution style. So if I look, for example, in our contact center environment, if I look at the agents that we've got that are working across the board there, we now have tech that's employed that when somebody phones and says, what are the rules in terms of what I can pack in my bag? Now AI can answer that. They don't have to regurgitate the same thing that they're regurgitating all the time, which means they can move on to tasks that are more meaningful and more interesting.
Are those jobs disappearing though? Because I was shocked to see, I think in the last year, I tried to go into a bank and they don't have tellers anymore. And I
Yeah.
remember growing up, that was such a big deal.
Yeah, being
That
a
was
bank teller.
the core business, right?
Yeah.
Walking into a bank, we're all there with our little slips, waiting to deposit money or whatever.
Yeah. Look, I think it's changing. I think there probably are some of that need that was there for that kind of road work. Well, it just won't be there. So that won't be in place anymore. But equally, there's a whole lot of new work that is coming in terms of being able to quality check and assure that what's going on from the AI's perspective is still operating as it should. It's a bizarre kind of technology. It's not like we've known a machine that you put one thing out and there's a predictable outcome. It does kind of need some coaching and some guidance. So in our environment, for example, we've taken a small team that were agents that were dealing with customers. Now they quality check the AI. So
because you do need someone to perform the quality control aspect.
You do. Yeah, you absolutely do. It's a different kind of technology to work with. It still surprises me every day. It's remarkable what comes out of it, but you do need that section. But what's so great is that those guys are now no longer stuck in the drudgery of doing the repetitive tasks they used to do. They're now kind of doing more interesting stuff,
And talk about interesting, lastly, what excites you at the moment about the industry and where it's going?
I think it really is based around this idea of technology. I mean, there's so much happening in aviation constantly. I mean, obviously massive kind of developments in terms of what propulsion will look like in the future, going into greener technologies and having this kind of infrastructure to propel things. A small analogy, right? I mean, the computer that helped put the first man on the moon, allegedly on the moon, put the first man on the moon, it was an entire room. We've got more computing power by multiples in our pockets and by virtue of our cell phones these days than what they had then.
I mean, our cell phones double as TV sets. You can book a flight. You can buy electricity.
You can book a flight. Please book a flight. But you can book a flight. You can do so much. And I mean, the reality is that is just taking this game really, to the next level. And in the right ways, typically it's in the right ways in terms of customer experience. It's in the right ways in terms of safety. It's in the right ways in terms of efficiency, which has an environmental impact. It's all the things that are happening are sort of happening in the right direction. I truly believe that.
Kirby, really good to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for watching this edition of AI Impact Talk with me, Timbekile Mkhototo. We'll be back soon with another episode that we hope will be as insightful as our conversation with Kirby today. See you soon.